"Sir, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and come with me." The flight attendant's voice trembled as she stood in the first-class aisle, avoiding eye contact with the elderly man in seat 3A. Her name tag read Maya, and her fingers clutched a tablet like a shield against what she was about to do. Arthur Vance, 83 years old, with steady hands that had once guided patrol boats through enemy waters, looked up from fastening his seatbelt. His weathered face showed no surprise. He'd learned long ago that conflict came when you least expected it. "There's been a situation with the seating," Maya continued, her words rushing together. "Another passenger has priority for this seat." That passenger stood behind her, tapping his Italian leather shoe against the aircraft floor. Preston Hayes wore a $2,000 suit that looked like he'd slept in it, his Rolex catching the cabin lights as he checked it for the third time in 30 seconds. His mouth twisted with impatience. "Look, I don't have all day," Preston cut in, shouldering past Maya. "I paid $2,800 for this seat. Cash. Not points, not military discounts, real money." He jabbed a finger at Art. "So whatever mix-up happened here, it's not my problem." Maya's hands shook as she verified Preston's boarding pass. "Mr. Vance, I can offer you a seat in economy, row 31, middle seat. We need to resolve this before departure." Art stood slowly, his navy blazer catching the light. A small silver pin on his lapel, 3 stars above a patrol boat, gleamed briefly. He gathered his simple carry-on without protest, moving past Preston's smirk with the same calm he'd once used navigating hostile rivers. But in exactly 9 minutes, everything would change. If you believe veterans deserve respect, hit that like button. Arthur Vance moved through the first-class cabin with an economy of motion that defied his 83 years. His shoulders, though slightly stooped, carried themselves with purpose. His hands, marked by liver spots but rock-steady, gripped his carry-on with the same precision they'd once used to man a .50 caliber mount. The silver pin on his lapel caught nobody's attention. Why would it? To most passengers, it was just another piece of metal, no different from a corporate logo or fraternity badge. But those 3 stars above the patrol boat silhouette represented something most people couldn't fathom: the brown water navy, sailors who'd fought their war in muddy rivers rather than blue oceans. As Art walked past Preston's sprawled legs, a memory flickered. Dawn on the Bassac River, 1968. The air thick enough to chew, diesel fumes mixing with jungle rot. His PBR crew scanning the mangroves for movement, knowing that death could come from any shadow along the riverbank. They'd learned that survival meant choosing your battles, that sometimes the smart move was backing down to fight another day. That's what this was, a tactical withdrawal. Making a scene would delay 500 passengers. It would give Preston exactly what he wanted: attention, validation, proof of his importance. Art had seen his type before, desk jockeys who mistook volume for authority. "That's not right," a woman whispered to her husband in 2B as Art passed. Her diamond earrings glittered with indignation. "Poor guy," someone muttered from across the aisle. "All that money can't buy class." A businessman in 4A actually half stood, as if to say something, then thought better of it. His eyes followed Art with a mixture of sympathy and shame. Even the flight attendants exchanged glances. A senior attendant near the galley, his name tag read Alistair, watched the scene with narrowed eyes. His decades of experience had taught him to read situations, and this one stank of injustice. Art heard none of it. His focus remained forward, navigating the narrow aisle toward economy with the same steady purpose he'd once used to navigate hostile waters. Each step was measured, deliberate, giving nothing away. Behind him, Preston flopped into seat 3A with a satisfied grunt, already pulling out his laptop. The cabin door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. The clock started ticking. Preston Hayes stretched out in seat 3A like he owned the entire aircraft. His fingers danced across his MacBook keyboard, occasionally pausing to sip the pre-departure champagne Maya had nervously offered. He'd already demanded an extra pillow, complained about the temperature, and asked twice when the Wi-Fi would activate. "Finally," he announced to no one in particular, "a seat that matches my status." He popped a complimentary warm nut into his mouth, crunching loudly. Meanwhile, 30 rows back, Art wedged himself into seat 31E. The middle seat in economy was a special kind of torture for a man with combat injuries. His back, damaged decades ago when shrapnel tore through his patrol boat's hull, pressed against an unforgiving cushion. The passenger to his left sprawled into his space, earbuds blasting music. The one on his right had already claimed both armrests. Art's knees jammed against the seat in front. He closed his eyes, not in defeat, but in the practiced calm of a man who'd endured far worse. Mortar fire at 3 in the morning. Waiting in an ambush position for 12 hours straight. This was just another test of endurance. Back in first class, Alistair watched Preston demand a third refill of champagne before takeoff. The senior flight attendant had seen every type of passenger in his 27 years of service, but something about this situation gnawed at him. He'd noticed the pin on the elderly man's lapel, recognized the quiet dignity in how he'd handled being displaced. "Maya," Alistair called softly, guiding her toward the galley. "Tell me exactly what happened with the gentleman who was in 3A. Maya's face flushed. There was a duplicate booking. Mr. Hayes showed his confirmation, insisted he had priority. He was getting loud, making threats about calling corporate. The other passenger, Mr. Vance, he just agreed to move. I thought I was de-escalating." "You rewarded the louder voice?" Alistair said, keeping his tone instructional rather than harsh. "That elderly man had a confirmed first-class seat. Did you check the booking timestamps? Verify his status?" No. Mr. Hayes said he paid cash, said he was executive platinum." "Words aren't facts, Maya. We verify. Always." Alistair glanced toward Preston, who was now snapping his fingers for service. More importantly, moving a passenger from first to economy, especially to a middle seat, requires authorization. It's a service failure. Maya's shoulders dropped. "Should I have called you?" "Yes. But more than that, you should have recognized what was really happening. We just let a paying customer bully another passenger out of his seat. That's not de-escalation. That's capitulation." Alistair picked up the interphone. The captain needed to know. "Comment below if you've ever stood up for someone being mistreated." Alistair pressed the interphone button with practiced precision. The connection to the flight deck click through immediately. "Captain Rostova, this is your lead flight attendant. We have a passenger service issue I need to brief you on before we push back." "Go ahead, Alistair." The captain's voice carried the kind of calm that came from thousands of hours in command. "We had a duplicate seat assignment in first class. A new flight attendant moved an elderly passenger, confirmed ticket holder, from 3A to accommodate a more vocal passenger. The displaced gentleman is now in 31E, middle seat. He's wearing military insignia, appeared to be traveling alone, and complied without resistance." A pause. "Timeline?" "Occurred during boarding, approximately 9 minutes ago." "Service failure protocol wasn't followed?" "Negative, Captain. The situation was resolved at the flight attendant level, without supervisor input." "Understood. Stand by." In the cockpit, Captain Eva Rostova processed the information. At 58, she carried herself with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making decisions where seconds mattered. Her path to the commercial flight deck had begun in a very different cockpit, the cramped confines of a P-3 Orion submarine hunter. For 12 years, she'd flown long patrols over the North Pacific, playing three-dimensional chess with Soviet submarines. 10-hour flights, hunting ghosts beneath the waves, where patience and precision meant the difference between success and failure. The Cold War had been fought in whispers and sonar pings, not headlines. That service had taught her about chains of command, about protecting those under your authority, and about the weight of decisions. Now, wearing 4 stripes on her shoulders, she commanded a different vessel but carried the same responsibilities. The regulations were clear. Title 14, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 91.3 stated, "The pilot in command of an aircraft is directly responsible for, and is the final authority as to, the operation of that aircraft." That authority extended to every soul on board, from first class to the last row of economy. More than regulations, though, this touched something deeper. The military had a saying, "Leave no one behind." It applied to more than battlefields. "First Officer Martinez," she said, "you have the aircraft." "I have the aircraft," Martinez confirmed. Rostova unbuckled her harness and stood. Her hand moved to the cockpit door lock. Federal law gave her absolute authority over passenger conduct and safety. But this wasn't about law, it was about leadership. The reinforced door clicked open. Captain Eva Rostova stepped into the first-class cabin, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. Conversations stopped. Flight attendants straightened. Even Preston Hayes looked up from his laptop, suddenly aware that something had changed. The 9 minutes were up. Captain Eva Rostova moved through first class with deliberate steps. Her uniform was crisp, 4 gold stripes catching the cabin lights. She didn't need to raise her voice or quicken her pace. Authority radiated from her like heat from a turbine. Passengers instinctively sat straighter. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the cabin crew stood at attention without being asked. She stopped first at seat 3A. "Mr. Hayes." Preston looked up, annoyance flashing across his face. "Can I help you? I'm trying to work here." "I'm Captain Rostova. I understand there was a seating issue during boarding." "Already handled," Preston said, turning back to his screen. The old guy agreed to move. "No harm, no foul." Rostova's expression didn't change. "I'll need you to remain here for a moment." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked toward economy. Her eyes swept the rows with the same intensity she'd once used scanning ocean surfaces for periscope wakes. Row by row, seat by seat, until she found him. Art sat wedged between 2 passengers, his hands folded in his lap. His eyes were closed, but Rostova knew he wasn't sleeping. She recognized the controlled breathing of someone managing discomfort. "Sir," she said, kneeling slightly in the aisle, "I'm Captain Rostova." Art opened his eyes, meeting hers with calm curiosity. That's when she saw it, the silver pin on his lapel, 3 stars above a patrol boat. Her breath caught. "Is that a small craft insignia?" she asked, her professional tone softening. Art nodded slowly. "River Division 534, the Sac River, 1968–69. Rostova's eyes held a depth of understanding that went beyond words. "I flew P-3 Orions out of Kodiak, hunting submarines in the Bering Sea. Different water, same watch." For a moment, the cramped economy cabin fell away. 2 naval officers, separated by decades and different wars, connected through shared service. She'd spent endless hours staring at sonar screens, hunting shadows beneath ice-cold waters. He'd navigated muddy rivers where death hid behind every bend. Different missions, same code. "Wait here," she said, standing with renewed purpose. Rostova strode back to first class, her jaw set. She stopped at 3A, planting herself where Preston couldn't ignore her. "Mr. Hayes, you'll need to collect your belongings." Preston's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Seat 3A belongs to Mr. Vance. He holds a confirmed reservation. You'll be relocated to economy class, seat 31E. "This is ridiculous." Preston's face flushed red. "I'm executive platinum. I paid cash for this seat. You can't just—" "Mr. Hayes." Rostova's voice dropped to a level that had once commanded sailors through North Atlantic storms. "As pilot in command, I have complete authority over the safety and operation of this aircraft. That includes addressing passenger conflicts and correcting service failures. You have 2 options: accept your new seat assignment or be removed from this aircraft. Federal Aviation Regulation 91.3 gives me that authority. I suggest you choose wisely." Preston's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. He looked around for support, finding only averted eyes and hidden smiles. "This is outrageous. I'll have your job." "Your choice, Mr. Hayes. Seat 31E or the jet bridge. You have 30 seconds. The first-class cabin held its collective breath. Preston's bravado crumbled under Rostova's unwavering stare. With shaking hands, he closed his laptop and gathered his belongings. The walk to economy had never seemed longer. A single passenger in row 7 started it, just 2 hands coming together in quiet appreciation. The sound spread like ripples on still water. Not the thunderous ovation of a concert hall, but something more meaningful. The soft, steady applause of recognition. From first class to economy, passengers joined in. The woman with diamond earrings who'd whispered her disapproval earlier now clapped with tears in her eyes. The businessman in 4A stood up, nodding his approval. Even the teenagers glued to their phones looked up, understanding they'd witnessed something rare. Captain Rostova personally escorted Art back to first class. She waited as he settled into seat 3A, ensuring his seatbelt was comfortable, adjusting the lumbar support for his back. "I wasn't looking for special treatment," Art said quietly. "I know," Rostova replied. "That's precisely why you deserve it." In the galley, Maya watched with wide eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the service cart. That, Alistair said beside her, is leadership, not management, not policy, leadership. I messed up, Maya whispered. You learned. There's a difference between keeping peace and enabling injustice. Today, you saw what happens when someone stands for what's right, not what's easy. Maya nodded, absorbing the lesson. The captain risked a complaint, bad reviews. She risked nothing that matters. Her integrity was never in question. Remember this, we don't serve seats or status levels, we serve people. Back at 3A, Rostova leaned down one final time. Enjoy your flight, sailor. Art's weathered face cracked into the smallest smile. Fair winds, Captain. Following seas, she completed the naval blessing, then returned to the cockpit. The impact resonated through the aircraft in unexpected ways. In row 12, a young Marine in civilian clothes straightened his shoulders, proud to share something intangible with the old sailor in first class. In 23C, a military spouse flying to meet her deployed husband felt a warmth she couldn't quite name. Preston Hayes, meanwhile, discovered that middle seats in economy were particularly uncomfortable when everyone around you knew exactly why you were there. The passenger to his left, the same one who'd been sprawling earlier, made a point of claiming the entire armrest. Karma, it seemed, flew commercial. A flight attendant from another section approached Art with a fresh cup of coffee. From the crew, she said simply, "Thank you for your service." Throughout the cabin, phones came out, not for complaints or negative reviews, but to share a different story. "You won't believe what I just saw," texts began. This captain stood up for a veteran. Social media posts started trending before the plane even pushed back from the gate. Maya brought Art a menu, her hands steady now. "Mr. Vance, what can I get you?" "Just water, thank you," Art replied. "I've got everything I need." Subscribe for more stories of military justice and honor. As Flight 714 lifted into the sky, two different philosophies of power sat 30 rows apart. In 3A, a man who'd commanded patrol boats through hostile waters understood that real authority comes from protecting those in your charge. In 31E, someone was learning that throwing money and tantrums at problems only works until you meet someone who can't be bought. Art Vance never raised his voice, never pulled rank, never mentioned the bronze stars or purple heart that accompanied his service. He'd simply stood up and moved, knowing that true strength sometimes looks like surrender to those who've never been tested. Captain Rostova demonstrated something increasingly rare in our world: moral courage. She had nothing to gain and potential headaches to face. Corporate complaints, negative reviews, angry emails, all possible consequences of her decision. She acted anyway, because leadership isn't about avoiding turbulence. It's about navigating through it with your principles intact. The military teaches many things, but perhaps none more important than this. We leave no one behind. Not on battlefields, not in boardrooms, and not in airplane cabins. That thin silver pin on Art's lapel connected him to every sailor who'd ever stood watch, just as Rostova's wings connected her to every pilot who'd ever taken responsibility for others' lives. Preston Hayes had tried to buy respect. Art Vance had earned it decades ago on a muddy river half a world away. In 9 minutes, an aircraft cabin learned which currency holds its value. Share this story with a veteran who deserves recognition.